Get a PhD in data science. That's my recommendation if you're in college.
Data is huge. Data is huge.
Yeah, it is. It is. And yeah, you'd be surprised what those jobs pay, especially right out of school. It's always a running joke right in TA. As you have access and exposure to all the different, I mean, you're working on positions and you're seeing what people are getting paid. I've more than once have I heard a recruiter say to me, "Man, I really should have gotten into this." Right? Like it's awesome to see someone graduate right away and making so much money. Hi, I'm Ben Dickinson, Director of Talent Acquisition Americas at Citrix Systems in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Hey, Ben, thanks so much for finding time to join us on the AVI podcast on this Friday afternoon. Glad to connect with you at the beginning of 2021. A lot going on. Great start, interesting start to the year. So thanks for finding time. Tell us a little bit more about your background professionally, where you come from, career-wise, and then I'll want to spend a couple of minutes talking about your current role.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it. As I mentioned, I'm Ben Dickinson. I'm currently the Director of Talent Acquisition Americas at Citrix, and have spent my whole career in recruiting and human resources. I went to Florida Atlantic University here down in South Florida, and initially joined a boutique staffing firm based in Boca right after graduation. Wasn't, like many people, I think, I fell into recruiting. Had a little bit of experience of it for some college days actually, but found that it was something that suited my some sales skills, my enjoyment of just connecting with people and finding out about people, and it's something that I think all recruiters, from the beginning of their career, right? If you enjoy making connections and understanding how you can fit someone's skill set to a job or introduce them to somebody, that'll make you a successful recruiter. So after a few years focusing primarily in HR search at that firm, I ended up getting hired by one of my clients at First Data and worked for one of their large regional facilities down here in South Florida, and grew my career in corporate recruiting at First Data. Got a lot of exposure. Was really fortunate, to get to go work for a global company like that. You find through, in my career anyway, I found I went from large organizations to small organizations to mid-sized high growth organizations. And I found that to be a really fun journey because you get things like in the big companies, tons of resources, great systems, great tools. And then from there, I shifted over to a mid-sized company that was in really high growth mode and, helped establish a TA function at that organization, right? Where you have slightly different experience, from an employment standpoint. Not as many tools and systems and not as much budget, but the ability to influence and change things if you want. And that's also really fun. And then I went back for a short stint in the agency world and opened up a division for a company down here in South Florida, really leveraging, my network of folks that I do down here in South Florida. And then about a year ago, joined Citrix to run talent acquisition for the Americas.
Well, that's exciting. Quite a journey you have, and I can definitely relate to going from, corporate, Fortune 500 organization to smaller company, boutique shop. And, I've gone through a very similar journey. So I can definitely relate to all of the different experiences. I'm actually part of, a lot smaller startup that we've been building in stealth mode, coming from, Citrix, from Ultimate Software, very big companies. So definitely very interesting perspective, from that standpoint. As far as your current role, being the head of TA, tell us a little bit more about what really falls under your purview. We all tend to think, generalize, it's, just an HR function and that's it. So just want to get a little bit deeper understanding for our listeners, what really falls under kind of that talent acquisition role.
Absolutely, yeah. So the TA function or the TA organization at Citrix is quite robust. We have a number of different departments inside talent acquisition. So I run what we consider to be the delivery side of that. I lead a team of about 25 recruiters, sourcers, and university recruiters. And our responsibility is the mechanism of filling the requisitions that come through and open in the organization. We have internally here in TA, we also have TA operations and a whole centers of excellence team that covers TA marketing, HR, BI, and data. We've got sourcing and diversity and inclusion as well as key components. But for me and my responsibility and my team, we're a team of recruiters that are partnering with the business to help them identify the right talent and bring talent to them so that they can make some hires and build their teams out.
Well, that's exciting. You guys are on the forefront, and I've been on both sides of that equation where I was a hiring manager and then on the staffing side as well. So it's very, definitely completely different, sides when you actually hire people or actually help the organization find and source and recruit folks. So definitely critical mission responsibilities there. So you've been in talent acquisition for most of your career, obviously, built up quite an expertise there. Share with us any trends or ideas that really excite you in this space. What are your what do you think is the next big thing? What are you researching? What are you passionate about? Maybe what are you looking to invest in? Just curious to get your take on that.
So I see that as a short and a long-term question, really, right? So I think today, and what most TA organizations, if they haven't already started to make this shift, becoming a data-driven partnership organization is key crucial to our success inside an organization, inside a larger company. So the things that that we're doing here at Citrix is ensuring that we can partner with the business and help educate them on things like market conditions, talent, availability, the talent pools that are, out there for them when they go to search, even compensation information, right? So our recruiters are no longer just order takers, and they're not just showing up and saying, tell me what kind of job profile you want to see, and then go off and try and find the talent. We need to come to those meetings in sort of from a partnership lens and want to try and help educate the business as to what's happening out in the industry and the market right now. As many people know, I mean, even though we have pretty high unemployment numbers, there is a real challenge to find the specific talent that a lot of companies are looking for, and we feel that at Citrix significantly. When it means specific technology experience or specific sales experience, for example. So we have to be able to help partner with the business and help them understand some of the challenges that are out there and how we might better market those roles, and use the information that we have available to us, so the data that we can show past performance and help inform the business on that. From a long-term standpoint, what I'm personally most fascinated about is how technology is going to change the way we do work, and I mean that from a recruiting and TA technology standpoint. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that has been coming out in recent years, right? Whether it be AI and screeners or sourcing tools. And I do wonder how that finds its place eventually in all large TA organizations. We've been exploring a lot of that, whether it's just front-end assessment tools, right? So how can we better get through the funnel? We have examples of open positions where we'll get 500 applications almost immediately for a role. Right. So how do I help enable my recruiter to get through those 500 applications without having to individually click through those things? And then, we layer in just the concept of, being fair and inclusive in that process, right? So, I mean, can we find tools that help us do that versus just relying on an individual and what maybe their own personal biases may be when they're looking at those resumes? So that's something that I find really interesting. And I know we're spending a lot of time talking to potential partners in creating that, whether that's something to help ease the recruiter's workload on the front end, or it's something that helps us go out and find really good talent out in the marketplace, right? So some sourcing tools where we can say this is an ideal profile, go do it. A lot of the systems that we use today, use LinkedIn for an example of as a sourcing method. We're still relying on the recruiters to enter in a lot of those search terms and manually handle that process. So how can we accelerate that for them and make it a little bit quicker so we can deliver for the business, to the business faster as well.
Right. No, that's exciting. Definitely very interesting trends. And it sounds like, that initial screening, that initial evaluation process is very, it's very labor intensive, and it's very in terms of, just going through every single application and be able to funnel that and come up with almost a short list of the candidates for a particular role. If there's any type of technology that can really help streamline that process, sounds like it's, will definitely help from that perspective.
It's crazy. There's not a one size fits all solution in that, right? Where we have pockets where we see higher volume, maybe we have a solution there. But then once we get to, a certain level of, let's call it a developer, right? An engineer. I wouldn't be able to send them to a front end assessment, right, to evaluate if they're any good, because then we would lose the interest of the candidates, right? When you get to kind of a certain level in your career, not that interested in
Yeah.
playing games on the front end, right? So it's being able to create, solutions that will work for specific pockets of the business, but being, our focus is on how can we leverage technology to get better at what we do too, right? Not just make our jobs easier, but like, are we finding the best talent, for what the business needs?
For sure, for sure. No, definitely that makes sense. Which brings me to another point. You mentioned use of technology. Share with us any tools or any software, any particular technology that you guys are currently leveraging that really helps you, elevate your performance, operational efficiency, or anything that you actually, wish that existed, and something that would definitely, help you guys out from that standpoint. Curious to get your take on that role of technology.
Yeah, so we're fortunate enough to have a really robust ATS system here at Citrix. We use Workday, and it's fully integrated throughout the rest of the HRIS stack here at Citrix too. So I think from an experience standpoint, we do a pretty good job, right? There's always room for improvement on how we onboard people and we bring people into the organization and communicate with candidates. But overall speaking, right, when you have a fully integrated ATS to an HRIS platform, it helps when it comes to just new hire paperwork and all kind of the basics that make your first week on the job really smooth and easy, or maybe pre-day one. On top of that, so we use Yellow as our CRM, our sourcing CRM platform, and that's really beneficial in the sourcing organization that we have stood up here. We unleash the sourcing org in a couple of different ways. So we have kind of our standard pipelining efforts that we know, we've got roles that we regularly have to fill, right? Whether it be certain technology development roles or sales, which are really kind of our two main customer groups when it comes to things in Citrix, right? They have the highest volume of need. So we spend a lot of time pipelining, and then, drip campaigns, keep warm, campaigns, getting interaction with the managers to that pipeline as well to make sure that they're engaged and it's not just a, cold lead list sitting out on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also unleash the sourcing team when it comes to, high need, right? So hard to fill position, super unique skill set that, we know is going to be difficult for us to find. We don't want just one recruiter working on that. Let's try and get some extra hands in there to help do the lifting.
Yep.
So, CRM platform like that's been really helpful to us. We use Talent Neuron and LinkedIn Talent Insights as some of our advisory tools for our managers. So, we're on LinkedIn as an enterprise customer, and I think that's, table stakes nowadays in the recruiting world, right? That's where a lot of people are going out to find their talent. And, we use that as a sourcing platform for sure. But then also I find that Talent Insights and also Talent Neuron, which is a Gartner tool, is another one that we leverage to try and pull information. So when we go to that kickoff meeting, right? So we no longer call it an intake meeting here at Citrix, right? We refuse to use the term intake because that's more of a tactical conversation. So when a recruiter gets a new requisition, they go to a hiring manager and they have an advisory conversation about, here's what the market looks like for the role that you're looking to fill. Here's some data that I'm bringing to the conversation that shows, what talent availability is, what the market's paying, how does that compare to what we're looking for, right? And that I think is a great first step in us creating that partnership with the business and not just looking like a service arm of the organization. And then we are, as I mentioned, we're entertaining a number of different assessment tools right now. So we use today HackerRank and CodePair, which is all like a tool in one. HackerRank is a great front end platform for us to assess more entry level development talent, engineering talent. And then CodePair is their kind of partner piece that allows us to do virtual whiteboarding sessions, and it really helps in the online interviewing or the virtual interviewing program, where we had a lot of noise in the beginning. COVID threw everyone for a loop, right? We all had to very quickly become a virtual workforce. Thankfully, Citrix, with the business that we're in, I think we were really well prepared for that, and it was just a matter of making sure everyone was using Workspace, and we had virtualized desktops almost immediately.
Yeah.
But hiring managers, right, had a lot of interesting challenges too, right? When you go to the engineering side, where they were used to meeting candidates face to face and having real live, whiteboarding sessions, right? Where they want to see a design drawn out how you think and what your methodology is, and they're like, well, we can't do this now. What do we do? And so having a tool like CodePair that allows us to do virtual whiteboarding sessions is really helpful. And then layering in assessments, where they make sense. But when we talk about that future technology, that's where I've been spending a lot of time and talking to vendors and, considering new partners is, do we have AI tools that will help us quickly get through these, large candidate pools and find really top talent for us to identify, so we can, speed up the process, because time is money. The longer a hiring manager has their requisition open, the more frustrated they get, and it does cost the business too.
Right.
We see that a lot in sales, right? So one of the metrics that we track heavily in sales is actually their time to start versus our time to fill. Where you see that a lot in TA in general, right? The kind of table stakes is time to fill. How long is it taking us to fill recs? We've switched that metric over to the sales organization to make sure that we're focused heavily on when do we have that salesperson in the seat, starting to work, because that's when they can start, counting for some revenue tied to that job, right? And that's how we can impact the business, right? If we can get salespeople in there faster, then they can start making money for the company faster, and we all win.
Right. No, absolutely. Those, very interesting perspectives. Thanks for sharing a lot of the tools that you guys are using and leveraging for, for your operations. You mentioned some technical assessment tools. I may have some recommendations for you outside of this conversation. So
Cool.
There's no bias, there's no promotion. But really good friends of mine who, they actually appeared on the show. They're the founders for different tools in the assessment space. So definitely very interesting.
I think I know what you're talking about. Now we had a presentation probably 2 months ago. We were hot and heavy on that. I think.
Awesome. Yeah. There's quite a few. There's quite a few. That space really evolved, especially through past year with the pandemic. I think that really elevated the need for those types of tools. So definitely, there's quite a few very interesting players. So definitely going to share that with you.
One of the things that I uncovered during those conversations, right? It's almost not that it's easy to land on a technical assessment tool. There are a lot of choices out in the market, and I think they all bring certain value and have certain negatives to them each. But it's also we had other customer groups inside the company that were wondering how they might also leverage assessments.
Yeah.
And so outside of tech, right? So in tech you can have sort of a yes/no response, right? Does this individual possess these skills? Do they know how to code in this language or what have you? When you get into the soft skill assessment side, that a lot of managers find that they maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable in face-to-face interactions, uncovering some of that stuff. How do we assess for that? And that's been an interesting riddle as we've gone through these conversations with the assessment partners as well. Do we decide to go down that road or not? The jury's out on that, but still trying to explore it.
Yeah, but that makes sense. It would be really nice to have a comprehensive solution that encompasses different divisions within the organization. So it's not just one dimensional like this, because then it becomes, from a vendor management perspective and, disparate systems in place, it's definitely a challenge. So it can definitely relate to what you're talking about. You briefly mentioned some, extremely challenging roles, very difficult roles to find. Curious to get your take on, what are those types of roles? What are the most in demand yet very difficult to find? The reason I'm asking this question is because a good portion of our listeners is, the early stage career professionals or the second year MBA. So, just entering the workforce, and a lot of questions we get from them is around that particular aspect. Hey, what roles are, in very high demand and very hard to find? Like if I was to invest my time and resources into learning, where should I go? What should I do? So I would love to hear your take on from that perspective.
Get a PhD in data science. That's my recommendation if you're in college.
Data is huge. Data is huge.
Yeah, it is. And you'd be surprised what those jobs pay, especially right out of school. It's always a running joke right in TA. As you have access and exposure to all the different, you're working on positions and you're seeing what people are getting paid. I've more than once have I heard a recruiter say to me, "Man, I really should have gotten into this." Right? Like it's awesome to see someone graduating right away and making so much money. For us, where I see the biggest lift, and it's a real challenge to find the right talent for us. Security is probably number one. I wrestled with this. I actually thought about, I had a conversation with some team members recently, and we were talking about this. And cloud engineering is always a challenge, right? That's a hot topic. A lot of organizations, particularly in the tech space, have moved that direction. But one of the benefits you see in the cloud side is you've got AWS, you have Azure, you've got folks that have sometimes different skills, but organizations a lot of times are happy to take someone who maybe comes from a different platform and are willing to train on theirs, right? They're not vastly different. So at least the talent pool you can kind of cross and have like skills and just go pull someone that maybe that has AWS background for an Azure job. But in security, we don't have that benefit, right? So you really see a shallow talent pool in security, and now that has become number one topic, right? I mean, it's on a monthly basis you can find an article about another organization that's had a major security breach, and it is a number one. I mean, I'm sure if you looked back in the last 10 years, the amount of like CISO roles that have opened up in organizations in that time, right? Which was a job that didn't really exist prior to that. And that has driven entire organizations dedicated to security. So for us, and we have that too, right? So we have a massive organization just dedicated to that. As we've got networking solutions, cloud solutions, SaaS solutions, and all those things that we need to make sure we provide a secure environment to our customers. That means that we've got to work real hard on that end. I know from a TA standpoint, security is definitely one of the biggest challenges to find the talent. The other side of it, I mean, we get some real niche skill sets. Machine learning, AI, like a lot of kind of the newer stuff where you don't get folks that have a ton of depth and many years of experience, right? Even the managers sometimes have very little experience in some of these technologies.
Right.
So it's hard to find someone with, 5 years of really robust machine learning experience when, the technology hasn't been around that long, right? Or has just barely. Like recently, Elasticsearch was one that I'd heard talked about, and that's like just you talk like emerging tech, right? The stuff that just pops up, and they're like, hey, we need a bunch of people that can do this, and they're like, I've never heard of that, right? So you spend time trying to find that and look it up. Those are kind of the core areas from a technology standpoint. I think data is key, right? I mean, even in TA, that there's been a massive transition from how we used to run talent acquisition. Even when I think back in early parts of my career and how we reported out on things versus what we have today. We have a TA BI team here in Citrix, right? That is dedicated. It's not just one person, right? It's a group dedicated to creating the dashboards that we need, making sure the data is crisp so that we can go and pull it out. And then if we have adjustments or new inquiries that we need to make. So anyone that comes with a data background is going to have, and that doesn't necessarily mean get a data science degree, which of course is, might be writing yourself a blank check in many ways. I mean, I think, when it comes to earning potential and, need in the market, that's a great degree path. But at the same time, if you are an individual that's not necessarily going down that path, getting yourself familiar with it and, trying to expose yourself as much as possible to data analytics, and being able to speak to the numbers like that, I think is going to make you different in the candidate pool side of things. And that's very true in something like talent acquisition that always used to just be a soft skill thing, right? Can the person talk? And they pick up the phone and call candidates? We can teach them how to search. Now it's, can you analyze and then advise our customer base?
Right.
And being able to look at the reports that we can see and make assumptions from that, and then show our clients and advise them properly on it, I think will be really helpful.
That's very interesting. The very last point that you just made, I've been hearing a lot of that. I interview a lot of executives from different companies, and when we talk about very niche skill set and which ones are difficult to find and so forth, yes, the themes are very similar: data, advanced tech, cybersecurity, all of that. But also the other aspect of that from the soft skills perspective, yes, the technical skills, they're important, but they evolve. Like you said, different technologies emerge and stuff like that. So for a very successful candidate to be able to pair that up with extremely robust set of soft skills, emotional EQ, be able to articulate complex problems in a simple manner. I think, be able to collaborate, virtually with, through the past year, we all, saw the elevated need for that. I think those are the type of skill set, the combination of those becomes extremely important. And, that's definitely exactly what you're talking about. So definitely thanks for sharing that insight.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's definitely how a candidate would be able to differentiate themselves, particularly in a more soft skill driven role, right? So, and that can apply, obviously in finance, but, when you look at some of the sales, marketing, human resources, those groups, they're all trending that direction, right?
Yeah.
I used to have a sign in my office that said HR is the new IT.
Right.
10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of during that evolution of where organizations were all transforming digitally.
Hmm.
But people were, companies were realizing quickly that the people that run the technology are far more important than the technology you just bought, right? Because it's immediately outdated, needs to be customized and updated, et cetera. And I've seen that transition take place again recently when it comes to data, right? So TA is no longer just spitting anecdotes out to the business about, man, it's really hard to find people. Everyone I call just says this, right? Like we have to be able to bring a lot more to the table to help them understand what it is that we're doing and how we can better serve them. So.
Right, absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. We've talked a little bit about the different tools that you use and techniques to find the best talent. You guys were in the news recently about one of your executives saying close to 600 jobs, to be filled at Citrix, which is, an insane number. So, I'm assuming the bulk of that workload is gonna is gonna fall kind of on your group, your team, your division. So from a standpoint of utilizing different techniques or strategies or initiatives you have in place, that would help you, really attract the top talent to your organization. Aside from the tools that you've mentioned, anything that you could share with us in terms of different strategies in place to really target that specific talent and be able to actually attract that to your organization?
So I think we're in a fortunate position that Citrix, so COVID certainly, when we look back at 2020, right? I mean, that's going to be the headline, I think, for just about everyone when we think about what happened in industry. And we were fortunate enough, like I mentioned before, we're kind of in the business of desktop virtualization and helping people be able to work wherever they want, whenever they want. So Citrix pivoted quickly when we had to move to this, the virtual environment. And I do think that helped us in some ways too, right? There wasn't really a ramp up period for us. It was just flipping a switch and everyone just started working, from workspace on their laptops. I also think that there, from a candidate attraction standpoint, Citrix's name being in the headlines throughout 2020 in mainly positive ways, right? Like it's being a technology that has a place in an environment like we're living in right now helps tremendously when it comes to attracting talent. Individuals, I think, frequently when they're thinking about making a job, they're not just talking, they don't just want to know what's the role that I play in the company, right? Like what is my job, but it's how, what's the company's future? What do they do? What impact will I have to the success of the company as we move forward? And fortunately, I think people can quickly see when we tell the Citrix story to them, and what we're doing today and kind of our plans for the future. We are well positioned to be pretty successful in this environment, in this COVID environment, which is great. We just had an announcement 48 hours ago, right, of an acquisition of a kind of a content collaboration partner in a company called Reich out in California that helps kind of close out a lot of our product offerings, right? Some back office IT offerings and now more end user offerings too, which is exciting, right? And that's part of the story, our recruiters tell when we get on the phone with candidates and we talk to them, right? Is, how do we engage those candidates and get them excited?
Yeah.
So we created earlier this year, or last year, sorry, what we call a TA business partner model. And it mirrors a little bit of the HR business partner model that's really popular in many organizations, right? Where you sort of have an embedded HR contact in the business that gets a lot closer to the business functions. So they understand what's happening and they can help strategize around talent efforts and things like that. This is the same from a TA standpoint, right? So, how do we embed ourselves into the business and get to help predict the headcount needs and the capital, human capital planning around these waves of, business initiatives that are being created, right? So the 600 head hire in our engineering expansion. Thankfully, that's globally, so it doesn't all sit on my shoulders. But we do have a big chunk of that number. Yeah, exactly. But it's there's we've got a lot of development centers and organizations throughout Europe and Asia Pacific and in India as well. So thankfully, it's pretty evenly distributed, but we've got plenty of work happening with that too. And of those positions, so one of the ways that we've tried to even tackle this, the struggle to find talent, right, is how do we develop talent from within? So a lot of early career hiring programs based here, right? So really robust university recruiting program here, internship program, et cetera. We do hire a lot of folks, like even of that big number, the big chunk of that is going to be 1 to 2 years of experience, right, early in career, and then how can we help grow and develop those individuals
Mhm.
throughout the company too. That's sometimes a lot easier, right? I mean, that certainly has its own challenges in hiring, large swaths of individuals and developing them, et cetera. But sometimes a lot easier than going out and just trying to find a couple of really, really specific skill sets at a high level. So we've got internally also a TA marketing organization that I think has done a great job this year, and we're going to continue it into 2021. Where we've produced a lot of content that helps. One thing that we've educated our hiring managers on last year in 2020 was leveraging their network and helping them be a part of this solution versus just go to TA, have them bring you some candidates, and you hire the one that you like. How can you be a part of that process, right? So if you're a hiring manager, you don't have to do any heavy lifting. We've got the videos produced. We've got, and a lot of our videos are highlighting leaders in the organization and the divisions that they run, or any interesting news that's happening at Citrix, as well as other content, static content, right, announcements, PR things that we can create for the hiring managers. So we hand it over to them, electronically, and all they do have to do is just click the button to post it to their LinkedIn network, right? And then that's getting out to their network. That drives a ton of referral interest. Which has been really helpful to us, when we try and especially embark on one of these large campaigns.
Uh-huh.
Reach out campaigns to our alumni network too, actually, right? So if we had a crew of people that had left in the last few years that filled certain roles that we know we're going to hire again in this big hiring push, we'll circle back and reach out to those folks and say, hey, this is what we've got going on now. How are things going, for you over at Oracle or Microsoft or wherever you went, right? Like, was the grass greener or not? And I think a lot of people, they make those changes just because they want new challenges. But, when great things are happening at organizations, they get excited and maybe want to come back too. So those are some of the things that we do to try and tackle that.
No, that's absolutely, thanks for sharing those strategies. It definitely seems like a very, very diverse spectrum from a strategic standpoint, not only focusing on specific, skill set, but also investing a little bit further into that, what we've talked about, that early stage career professionals, and, invest a little bit more into their learning, into their growth, because at the end of the day, some of the skill sets are such, unicorn set that it's difficult to find, that it makes probably more sense to bring somebody in with limited experience but willing to learn something within those lines and kind of groom that skill set internally. So that definitely makes perfect sense.
I try and find similarities, right, where we have, like the saying build or buy, right, when you talk about technology. In organizations, they're faced with that challenge, right, in an IT department or something. I think you have the same talent conversation, right? So is it easier to build or buy the talent, right? Can we go out and find some individuals that we can eventually get there? And they may not be there tomorrow, but we can eventually get there and we kind of groom them the way we want, or can we go out and just easily acquire that talent right now? I feel like obviously diversity and inclusion is going to be a big conversation in 2021. It has been in the past few years here at Citrix too. I mean, we have an individual in the TA team that's dedicated to that center of excellence already. And I think we're fortunate enough at Citrix, we've got an individual on the HR leadership team as well that runs diversity, inclusion, and belonging here at Citrix too. So we've had a lot of programming around that for many years. But when we talk about that from a TA standpoint, one of those, the themes that has come out in a lot of those conversations is like, I think the fastest impact that we'll be able to have on diversity and inclusion is going to be at this early stage career side. Because some of the challenge that we have when it comes to technology, let's say, right, engineers, it's not, you can't just wave a magic wand and solve all the diversity issues that you may have on your team just based on the talent that's available. And so, how can we help grow talent from within the organization that will, go on to have great careers, whether it be at Citrix or in other parts. But I think we can really tackle that pretty well by doing that from an early career stage too.
Right, absolutely. No, that's a great strategy. Definitely, expands the pool and the opportunities to really kind of fill the roles that not necessarily with talent sitting on the bench and waiting to, to be available. So absolutely. Ben, last but not least, in terms of your sources of information, your sources of learning, share with us any tools, any blogs, any Twitter profiles that you follow. What is your daily source of information? What's your content diet?
So I try and consume a lot of content. I'm not spending as much time out of the house anymore, so it's a little bit harder, right? Like used to just throw podcasts on when we were driving the car around or something. It was easy to get things that way. Now we're all stuck indoors, so we don't get as much. As far as TA specific, so I mean, a bit of a TA nerd too, right? So I enjoy listening to folks that I think are interesting in that space. I like Tim Sackett a lot. John Vlastelica, I think, is really interesting. He helped inform a lot of our TA business partner concepts as well. I think he's a really, really interesting mind in the TA space. I like Jim Stroud a lot too. Tim Sackett has a podcast that I think is really funny. I even saw this morning, I sent an email out. I tend to gravitate towards the individuals that speak in more of a raw way, right? Like, so it's not just like Harvard Business Review stuff. It's, Tim Sackett had an article this morning that said, like, why you're an idiot for checking references, right? And so that's enough to get me to click on it and dive in and say, okay, I want to hear his perspective on that, right? What's his take on that? I think ERE is a really good resource as well. If you're in the recruiting space anyway, the Electronic Recruiting Exchange is a great network, ERE.net. And so I get their daily email, and it's got a number of different blog topics and things like that. And then other content that I consume, a couple of daily emails. This is the Water Coolest and 1440 are like one's more kind of business related, but it covers a lot of tech companies. So it helps me kind of stay informed of things like a change at Intel, right, in the leadership. We talk about that a lot here internally, right? We've just got kind of a network of the TA folks that it's like, if you see something out in the market that you say, oh, Intel's just changed their leader and the VMware CEOs should have shifted over there. Let's talk about that, right? Like, is there a talent implication there? Does that open up opportunity for us to go and try and poach talent from some of those organizations where they're about to go through big change? So we try and keep the team communicating about that pretty regularly on our staff meetings and whatnot. But those are probably the top ones for me. And then I've got a lot of entertainment stuff too, right? Listen to Joe Rogan and whatnot. But
right.
And of course the Ivy podcast, right?
Of course. Yeah. It's definitely gonna be bookmarked after this, right?
Exactly.
I appreciate it. Ben, last but not least, what's is there a book that you always recommend to others, and why is that?
Yeah, so number one for me is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. I
love it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Simon a lot anyway. I follow him also. But that book has spoken to me ever since it came out 5 years ago, or whatever it was. It's been my guidepost as far as management is concerned and leading the team that we have here. And I see the benefits of it, right? I mean, if you've got a team of champions that will work hard for you and respect you and appreciate you because you've provided that appreciation to them, and just showing the team that you care about them and that you'll do what's possible to protect them from the external challenges that they have sometimes, right? Whether that's a hiring manager that's wanting to scream at somebody or other outside forces. I've just found that there's a ton of benefit if you can build a team that you have that level of trust with, and they know that you'll fight for them, then they'll fight for you. And it's a lot easier to, when you get 600 recs coming through for the engineering department and you have to tell everybody, hey, listen, this probably means that we're going to be working this weekend and we've got some heavy lifting to do. They're willing to do it because they know you have their back. And so I think that's, from a leadership standpoint, that's been my guideline.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that recommendation. And for our listeners, we'll make that title available in the episode notes. Ben, can't thank you enough for your time today. Lots of great insights. Personally learned quite a bit. Appreciate you being so generous with that, with that information. Definitely going to stay in touch with you, and perhaps, we're going to do another episode, later this year or next, and to see how much have changed, how much have transpired. So much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. I mean, it's been really nice talking to you. We probably could have gone for 2 hours today. So
absolutely. We could have
I'd
gone
love to circle back. Yeah, exactly. Same here, right? This is my favorite stuff to talk about, but would love to circle back in the future and see if some of my predictions are right? Like, have we been taken over by AI and chatbots, or are we? But yeah, it's been really nice chatting with you, and I look forward to staying in touch.